Welcome to CFO 4.0, the future of finance. The CFO role is changing rapidly, moving from cost controller to strategic visionary. And with every change comes opportunity. We are here to help you take advantage of this transition, to win at work, drive your career forwards, and lead with confidence. Join Hannah Munro, Managing Director of itas, a financial transformation consultancy, as she interviews key experts to give you real-world advice and guidance on how to transform your processes, people, and data. Welcome to CFO 4.0, the future of finance.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a slightly different episode of CFO 4.0. So we had a last minute guest cancellation because they were sick. And I am a big believer in consistency and repeatability with the podcast. So I hope you don't mind. I've kind of written my own episode for this one. So we'll see how it goes. And if you enjoy this episode, please do let me know because I'd love to know what kind of content you would value. So today's episode is all going to be about what are the common reasons that technology projects fail. And I'm going to talk through 10 different reasons that they fail, examples that I've seen play out in action. And then hopefully, as you go into your next technology project, you will avoid these really, really common mistakes. So let's get started. So the first one is the wrong direction. So it's a bit like getting on a plane and having the wrong destination. So maybe that's what we should call it. This is the reason technology projects fail is they haven't figured out their destination. So one of the things I always recommend anyone that's going into this kind of project is to make sure you sit down and think about what are the key objectives you're going to achieve with your technology or process transformation project. And in order, what are the priorities? Because you might have 3 reasons or 3 things you're trying to gain. You might want to close your month end faster, reduce resource, and improve reporting. For instance, obviously not very smart goals, but they are goals and objectives nonetheless. Now, what you need to be very careful about is that you have been very clear on, of those 3, what is the most important, because there may come a point as you go into your project where one objective competes with another. So it could be that you want to reduce the number of team members that you have within finance, or reduce the amount of resource it takes to close a month end. But in order to get the month end down to the 3 days that you want it to be, you need that resource. So what's more important? So not just setting your objectives and your goals, but also being very clear about the priorities. What is the most important thing that you need to achieve? So that's the first thing. So make sure you're really clear on your destination. And then obviously you can figure out how to get there, because at some point you're going to need to make a decision. And weigh up the importance of that. Now, the second reason a lot of projects fail that I've seen, and this is that they try and do too much at once, right? So they're trying to change process, they're trying to put in they're trying to change AP, AR, cash book. They're doing an integrations happening at the same time. They're putting in a new CRM and all of it needs to integrate. So they're trying to do too much at once. So wherever possible, try and hive off chunks of whatever project you're implementing and build on that success. So put it into phases or stages, whatever terminology you want to use, and create small focused chunks of effort. And the reason you do that is at some point something might happen. A key person may leave. The business may have a challenge with cash flow, or, lots of things can happen especially during a 12 to 18 month project, which is what a lot of the projects we work on are. But during that time, something may happen that may mean that you need to reprioritize the order in which you implement, the modules that you're actually implementing, or you might need to change the entire project. So this way you're creating it. The other reason for doing this smaller sort of phased approach rather than the big bang is to make sure that you're creating success, because success does drive success. If the team feel like they've won and they've achieved something, then they have more motivation to carry on. And change is scary. These kind of projects, they need a lot of effort from your team to get it and get it right. So make sure that they're feeling that success. And with smaller chunks of effort, you get more of a reward by doing that piece. And the team will feel the success and go, oh, we can do this. We're good at transformation. We're good at change, and we'll continue. And there's loads of other reasons, but the first thing is try not to do this. Or the second reason in my 10 reasons that technology projects fail is try not to do the big bang. Do it in a phased, staged approach. Get that change snowball rolling down the hill and building momentum, and you'll be a lot more successful in the long term. And you're building that change and momentum skill set into your finance team. So number 3. Don't go Lone Ranger. So I see this happen a lot. So especially if you are going into an organization or you're new into an organization and you've worked in lots of different finance teams before, you will probably go in and go, oh my God, like this is just, this is antiquated, or this could be so much more efficient. God, and you can really visualize how it should work because you've seen it in action working before. Don't forget that those individuals of that organization you're going into may not have seen this in action. So this will be very scary and very different. So you have to get them seeing the change. I have seen it once where a guy came into an organization. He knew exactly what he wanted. He was very clear, all the objectives there. But what he didn't do is he didn't bring his team along the journey with him. So nobody apart from him was sat in on demos and scopes. And he was the only one that made the decision on the software. And then when he gave it to the team to implement, they had no way of visualizing the value of this change or this solution because they hadn't been on that journey. So the big thing I would say to you is take your team on your journey with you, get them involved at the early stages, particularly those that are going to be key to making sure this works. Or if you've got any areas of key man dependency, they will know that area better than you do. Bring them in nice and early, get everybody on board, be really clear on what you're trying to achieve with this change and what it's going to look like for them, and you'll be so much more successful. So that's reason number 3. Reason number 4. So overachievers. So I see a lot of finance leaders that naturally they have such self-confidence and such self-belief, and that they know how much could be achieved in a small space of time. The challenge with that is that they're constantly pushing the boundaries. And when you're in a project where you've got to do the day job and you've got to implement, that's a lot of capacity that's required. So rather than trying to do everything, one of the things I always say is try and make sure that you're making choices around where you're spending your time and resource during a project. So if you don't need to have a massive depth of data migration, don't do it, because that can be a massive drain on resource. Even though it might help you become more efficient building an integration, if you don't have to do it in that phase, don't do it. So really making sure you're the one going, do we need that in this phase? Could we shift that out? Is there a different time that we could bring that into this conversation? Then please do, because it's those kind of choices where you're really making sure the scope is controlled and set and nothing varies from it. And you actively review anything that tries to push outside of scope. And don't try and overachieve in a project. There is a massive, you will see lots of benefits as you go through change, but you need to control the scope, because scope creep is one of the biggest reasons for failure within a project. So that's reason number 4. Reason number 5 is don't forget that technology can only automate what it can. Don't forget that technology is not just about automating what's already there. So a lot of people go into a technology project thinking they're literally just going to lift their really bad processes and make them more automated, right? So, and that's not the best way to get the best out of your technology implementation. And if you insist on doing that, you're likely going to have to customize the system beyond what it should be customized in order to deliver that. So the number 5 is all about try not to replicate your existing bad or issue, or processes that maybe don't work in the best practice way. Try and use any kind of technology implementation to redesign and rethink your processes. Now, it may be you go through that process and there's a really good reason that your process works that way. That is fine, but you need to challenge that effectively and make sure that that is really the case. I see a lot of people try to say, well, I have to do it in this way. And not realizing that the reason they do it that way is because that's the way they've always done it versus having a really good reason. So use technology as a tool to change your processes and use that implementation of that technology as a way to review those practices and work towards best practice. That's where you want to be. You want to be doing what's best practice. Now that could be looking at adding in more controls. It can be cutting out steps of processes. It can be lots of things. But fundamentally, you need to make sure that as part of your technology implementation, you are looking at rethinking your processes as part of it. And if there aren't any challenges to processes, as a finance leader, you really need to ask why. And then maybe that's one good question you could ask your team as they're going through an implementation is, what have we changed? So what are we going to need to change in order to make this system work well? And if the answer is nothing, then you maybe need to ask, so we're literally doing everything the same as we did before. Or it could just be, and making sure that there is at least some thinking. Now, it doesn't mean that processes won't be better, because, process being better is obviously good, but just making sure that there is some change to processes, because change is obviously improvement in most instances.
Now, for the £1 million question. What is the best finance software for your business? Is it A, Sage 50? Is it B, Sage 200 Standard? C, Sage 200 Professional? Or D, Sage Intact? An impossible question to answer without a lifeline. But we have the perfect lifeline for you. Our free quiz, Which Sage product is right for you? Will tell you which product is the best fit for your business in just 5 minutes. All you need to do is head to www.itassolutions.co.uk and answer a few simple questions.
Number 6, hold back the hordes. So what do I mean by that? I mean, very often there's stakeholders across the business that are invested in your finance technology project because they want better information, they want faster information, they want something from that implementation. And the big thing I would say is just make sure you're managing those stakeholder expectations. I see a lot of I have seen projects before where there's a stakeholder that is expecting that on the moment they go live that they're going to get all of these 21 billion reports that they've always wanted. And that conversation has not necessarily been had in advance. So I'm a big believer in just ask your stakeholders what it is they're wanting, set reasonable, realistic and achievable timeframes in which you are going to do that, and make sure that's in your project plan so that it's not just your finance team and you are happy with that project, that the wider business is really excited about the impact that you're having on it as well. So number 7, team balance. So there is, what I've noticed across the years is that there is some individuals that I put people into 3 categories. People that love change, thrive in changing, and can't cope without change. You'll notice that some of those tend to be consultants like myself. We like change. There are those that will deal with change. They don't particularly get excited about it, but they don't mind going on that journey if they agree with the destination, right? And that's probably, I'd say, about 70% of people. You get sort of 10% in that driving change, and you get about 60 to 70 in that I'll deal with it, but I don't have to like it, but I agree with where we're going, so I'm going to get on board and I will cope. And then you will get the third, right? group. And these are the ones that actively hate change. They're the ones that if you add a new field onto a document, onto a report, or that you change the look of something, they get really antsy. And there's normally some reasons underlying that, but fundamentally they hate change, not just a little bit, but they just really struggle. And those are the ones that you do have to keep an eye on and make sure they're feeling engaged as part of this process. So you've got those three groups. You need to make sure that when you go into an implementation, you have the right balance. If you've got everybody in that third camp as hating change, this is going to be a really challenging project. At the same time, as you can't have all of the really excited about change people, because to be very honest, once you've gone through your first wave of transformation, there's going to be no one that will enjoy doing the day job because they'll love the change too much. They'll want to stay there. So you need the right mix. You need somebody to help drive the change because they're really excited to get to know the new technology. You need the people that will, do the day job and keep going with that technology. And then you're going to need somebody that's going to be there once you've got the process in place, will happily pound away and do what they need to do to make it work. So you need to find the balance. And it is a balance. It's not one way or the other. So make sure that you have the right balance within that team, and particularly think about your engagement and your communication strategy with the 2 and 3, those that are not as comfortable with change, because they're the ones that you really need to focus on. You do need to bring them into the conversation early, because you're better off getting objections out in the selection process than the implementation process. You need to address all of that before you get into that piece. And you also need to make sure you've thought about what support do they need in order to make this project work. So that's that one. Next, you get in what you get out what you put in when it comes to technology. And that has never been more true when it comes to data. So making sure that you're thinking about your data migration strategy nice and early on, both in terms of how much are we going to migrate, but also the quality of that data. There is absolutely no point putting rubbish data into a nice new clean system, but please don't underestimate the time it takes to get that data clean. So making sure that you're way before you're deciding to start a project, you're thinking about making sure your supplier's data ledger, your supplier ledger's clean, your customer's ledger's clean. You've started thinking about your reporting requirements and your chart of account structure, all those kind of things. There is no downside to starting those kind of things early. Now, obviously, you might once you start implementing, you might need to make some tweaks to that, but you should absolutely be thinking about the quality of your data nice and early on, because the cleaner the data, the better the reporting is, right? So we want to make sure that that data migration piece is as clean and as accurate as possible, and that the data that we're pulling across into the new system is adding value. Resourcing effectively. My second to last one. So making sure that you're resourcing your project effectively. If your team are already working late nights and Saturdays to do the day job, you are not going to be in a position to find the time to implement a new system. So you are going to have to find a way to create capacity. It's either changing what they're doing and cutting down on the ask, or it's bringing in backfill resource so that they can step into this new technology project. So or thinking about your need for a new system earlier rather than later. Too many people wait till their back's against the wall before they implement time-saving technology, and it's not the way to do it. So really think ahead. If you can't think ahead and you're already in the thick of it, backfill resource, create capacity, because you're going to need it to drive change. And once you get it, then obviously you can reallocate that resource or do what you wish with it, but you need to have capacity for change in the first place. And last but not least is keep hold of those critical staff. As you go through an implementation, making sure that you have the people that in the conversation, and staying with the conversation throughout the journey of your transformation is really important. So we do see a lot of projects getting derailed because a key member of staff has left or has gone off on permanent sick for some reason, or sometimes they've gone on maternity or what have you. So just making sure that you've thought ahead for anything that's avoidable and you have a strategy. And for the stuff that's not avoidable, make sure that you've got internal documentation around objectives and reasons around the project. Obviously, as consultants, we sit on the other side and we try and brief that individual as to what the objectives were and what we've agreed and what we've delivered. But fundamentally, when you bring a new member of staff into a project to replace somebody that's already made a lot of decisions, it can take them a while to get up to speed and also they have to agree with the direction and the decisions that have been made so far, and that can also be a challenge. So making sure that you're thinking ahead for any avoidable staff changes. When you do have staff leaving mid-project, make sure they do a thorough handover. And that they can talk through what things, what's happening with that project, the whys, the decisions that have been made, so that as you move forwards, that doesn't become a blocker. It's really important. So guys, one of my fastest podcasts today, I think, but I'm really hoping this was useful and at least gives you some food for thought as you're going into your next finance and technology transformation project. Love to hear your thoughts on whether you found this session valuable. I always worry that I'm not doing the content that's adding value to you and the team. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this particular episode. Do you want more? Do you prefer more guest-based ones? And we'll see how we take things forwards. Thanks, guys, for listening. See you next time on the CFO 4.0 podcast.
So for me, one of the most important things about any transformation project is the partners that you work with. And whilst I'd love to list off a whole host of reasons why itas is the perfect partner for your transformation project, why don't I let our customers do the talking for us?
One really good thing working with itas is it's dramatically reduced my blood pressure. Obviously, an account system is critical to anyone's business, so innovation data, without that, like every company, we couldn't function as a company. So it's one of the most critical pieces of software, and any sort of vulnerability we have with that sort of keeps you awake at night. And now working with itas, I don't have any concerns about our accounts functionality and our account system and the usability and all of that. Working with previous partners, I've got some grey hairs and sleepless nights from that, as I say, because it's so critical. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and long may the relationship continue.